Today is the full moon day of the 5th month. We celebrate on this day what is often called Vesak in the Buddhist tradition. Vesak is the day when the historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha, of the Shakyan clan in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, when he was born. Therefore, this day is often called the Buddha Jayanti, and also the day when he was fully awakened, and also when he entered parinirvana, which is to say, when he passed away. Therefore, it's often called the Buddha Purnima. This is a very important day in Buddhist cultures, the most important day of the year. And today, I had the opportunity to join the Bhutanese Buddhist Society for a celebration of this Vesak. And it was wonderful. It was a great privilege and joy to spend time with them, chant with them, and to speak about the importance of harmony in our community. This day we celebrate the Buddha, but we should know that while this is the day of his awakening, this is the day when he became a Buddha, that part of the story is not the entirety of the story. The story of that individual's spiritual path doesn't begin on the 5th full moon of the year 2,563 years ago. That is the culmination of a long, long time of practice. And in the Buddhist tradition, we refer to that practice as having taken place over many lifetimes. How many lifetimes? Well, many lifetimes. Lifetimes that take up a whole aeon, even many aeons. You say, well, how many aeons? And the answer is many aeons. If you think about an aeon as being the amount of time that it would take the whole of Mount Everest to be ground away to powder that would blow away in the wind, if once every 100 years the goddess of the moon came down to earth and one feather of her robe lightly brushed the peak of Mount Everest, how long would it take for all of Mount Everest to wear away from just that? Consider how long that would be. It would be a long time. Well, one aeon, in the way it's counted in Buddhism, is longer than that. So we could say that it's something like the amount of time it takes for the universe to expand and contract. Right now we're still in the period of expansion, and it's been about 16 billion years. So you can imagine that one aeon is quite a long time. But the Buddha, from the first moment that he considered entering the spiritual path until his awakening, which is to say the entirety of his career as a bodhisattva, that was 300,000 of these aeons. So the universe, as we know it, expanding, contracting, 300,000 times. But that is actually just a very small fraction of the total amount of time, because along with that were 20 incalculably long periods. And then making up the periods between these periods, and also a bit left over at the end, is where you get the 300,000 aeons. So this is a very long time. It's an unimaginably long time. We have difficulty imagining, how long it will be until lunch. We feel like it's going to be unimaginably long until lunch. It's still hours until lunch. Lunch will be so good. Why isn't it lunch yet? But that's not nearly as long. The amount of time between breakfast and lunch isn't nearly as long as the amount of time it took for the Bodhisattva to make his first consideration of the spiritual path until his final awakening. So in celebration of his journey, I'll tell you a few stories, and let us try to relate them to our own experience. The very beginning of his path, a very long time ago, he was living in a world somewhat like this one. He was a leader in that world, and he had a very large animal that he used, which we'll just say was something like an elephant, so we'll just call it an elephant. He had a big elephant that he would use to do work, and he would use to fight battles. And you should know that at this point, he wasn't a particularly good person. He wasn't deep, he wasn't honest, he wasn't considerate. He was sort of like us. And so he heard that some other elephants had come in to a nice, beautiful area, a park that he liked very much, and had done damage there. A wild group of elephants had come there. And so he took his elephant, he rode his elephant to that park to look at the damage. And he was quite disappointed. He said, "Oh, those stupid elephants. I wonder what I should do about it. Maybe I should go kill them. Ha, that'll do something." But while he was having these evil, unwholesome thoughts, his own elephant, a beautiful, tame, helpful bull elephant, ran off into the woods, ran off into the jungle. And he thought, why? He's such a tame, wonderful elephant. Why would he just run off? And then he looked and he realized, he saw a female elephant. And due to lust entering his mind, all of the training that I've given him fell apart, and he ran off into the woods. This is terrible. Lust is really a terrible thing. And with that thought, with the thought that perhaps we should purify our mind of lust, of greed, of hatred, of ignorance, with that thought that maybe that's something we should do. Maybe it would be good to purify our mind of unwholesome states. With that began his path. To me, this is actually a wonderful story because it's a relatable story. We go through things like this all the time. Very ordinary things. Who knows what it would be for us? Maybe for us, our computer gets infected with a virus, and we think, it's really bad that my computer is infected with a virus. It sure would be good to purify this computer of the virus. Wait, I could purify my mind as well. And then right there, our spiritual path begins. Who knows what it is? But the point is, it doesn't have to be some deep, incredible experience in order to be a deep, incredible experience. We ourselves make it into a deep, incredible experience simply by considering the possibility of purifying and cultivating our minds. He then did that a little bit and then died. A few decades later, he died after having purified his mind occasionally, slightly, without much effort or determination. But his path had begun. Of course, he continued to be selfish and dishonest and greedy and hateful and a relatively bad leader. But his path had begun, and that's the most important thing. So, a long time passed, a very long time passed, very, very long time passed, longer than we can imagine. And he eventually was born into the period of Dipankara Buddha. This was a Buddha a long, long time before the historical Buddha, 2,500 years ago in India. Dipankara Buddha had come into the world, and the Bodhisattva, who eventually became Gautama Buddha in India 2,500 years ago, he was born as a man named Sumedha. And Sumedha heard about Dipankara Buddha. And he was quite impressed with the stories he had heard. He heard that this was a saint. This was a person worthy of trust, worthy of veneration, who can truly help you. He thought, wow, it would be good to meet such a person. And so he set off as a mendicant in order to meet this teacher. He finally got there, and he saw off in the distance the Buddha Dipankara. And he was even more impressed. Why? Because of the way the Buddha taught? No, he hadn't heard anything that the Buddha taught. Impressed by the way the Buddha lived his life? No, he didn't know anything about how the Buddha lived his life. Simply by the way he walked, his presence. He was amazed at that. Startled, never seen anything like it. It brought the possibility of true awakening home to him. He could for the first time consider the possibility that real awakening is actually possible. Now, of course, can we say that it's just entirely because the Buddha was awakened? No. Lots of people met the Buddha and didn't have that experience. Could we say that it was entirely because this man, currently named Sumedha, had done countless aeons of work on his own ethical, his own spiritual skill? No, because he had met lots of people, even though he had that skill. But the meeting of these two, he had ripened his own heart, then he saw someone who was manifesting the truth, and in one moment he realized, I also could realize the truth. And so he brought forth the determination for his own awakening, for his own complete enlightenment, which is to say, attainment of Buddhahood. And with astonishment in his eyes, with joy in his heart, he wanted to serve this Buddha. This Buddha had given him the greatest gift of all of his life, his entire bodhisattva career. So he wondered, what can I do for this Buddha and his Sangha as they walk? And he realized, oh look, they're walking on this road, and there's a muddy part of the road up ahead. Oh, I should do something about that. He knew that there was this muddy area. He didn't want the Buddha to get his feet dirty. Thought that would be terrible. This would be horrible. I need to do something about this. And so he quickly ran to that part of the road where it was muddy. And he dug channels, and he brought stones, and he brought flower petals and spread them over the muddy area. But he saw the Buddha and his retinue coming closer and closer. And he wasn't quite finished with the project of neatening this area, so he worked even harder and harder. And then the Buddha came closer and closer. Oh no, he realized, I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to finish. What will I do? There's still this small area here, several feet, that I haven't cleaned up yet. Oh no, this is disaster. And he was desperate, didn't know what to do about it. Just a little area, what will I put there? Don't have any more rocks, don't have any more flower petals. Oh no. Then he realized, wait. I have my body. Yes, I have my body that I can use. And so he laid himself down right in the mud, face down in the mud. And he called out, please, exalted Buddha, please, may you and your retinue, you and all of your students, just walk over me, trample me into the mud rather than getting your feet dirty. Please just walk right all over me. Just do it. That way you'll be appropriately served. And the Buddha then, Dipankara Buddha, looked at the Bodhisattva Sumedha and said, "Oh, very good. You have achieved, you have cultivated your mind to the point when you truly can attain awakening. In a long time, you will be born in the continent of India, and you will be named Gautama of the Shakyan clan, and at that time you will attain complete awakening." Now, the reason for this was that he had already met a Buddha in the past whose name was Gautama, and he was of a clan called Shakya, and he wanted to become a Buddha just like him, and he wanted to become just like him to the extent that he even wanted the same name. And so he had that wish, and that wish then came true with this definitive prediction, definitive prophecy of Dipankara Buddha. So he was overjoyed. He was very happy. And of course, nowadays, we may think that this is just impossible. We may think, no one would ever actually throw themselves into the mud for someone. Of course not. That would never happen. People should be equal with each other. It shouldn't be that someone throws himself into the mud. If you throw yourself into the mud, then that means you're less than. And if you're less than, then that's bad, because everyone should be equal, because I'm American and we have equality as one of our values. And so that's the truth. It's a spiritual reality that should apply everywhere throughout all time, and anyone who doesn't believe in that is backward. So no one would really be like that. But we should know that not only had he sacrificed his body in that way at that time, but a long time before that, he'd already sacrificed his body even more completely. Because he was living in the forest at that time as a mendicant with some spiritual friends. And he found, as they walked through the forest, picking fruit and herbs to eat, to care for their bodies, they found a tigress in the woods who was starving. It's hard, of course, for predators. It's common for predators to starve. And he became very worried about her because she had cubs. And they also were terribly emaciated. And he looked at her and he saw that she didn't even have enough strength to produce milk. She didn't have any milk for her cubs. And she was very worried about what would happen to those cubs and to her. And so he told his friends, his spiritual friends, go get meat. Find meat somewhere and bring it to her so that she doesn't die, so that they don't die. And so they left in search of meat, but they didn't find any. It was hard to find meat. And he became more and more worried, till finally he realized there's nothing to be done. I've eaten plenty, as I've had all this fruit, so I have good meat on me, so I can give that to her. And so he lay down right in front of her, hoping that she would eat him and become strong and be able to feed her cubs. But unfortunately, she was so weak, she couldn't even kill him. He was very worried about her. And so he dug in the ground next to her mouth a pit, a little bowl in the ground, and he found a sharp rock, and he cut his throat so that the blood would pour into the bowl. And he lay there and let the blood pour out so that she could drink it. And when she drank it, she could become strong. And when she was strong enough, she could eat him, and then she could feed her cubs. So in this way, he had sacrificed himself for this wonderful living thing. He had already proven to himself that he could sacrifice himself for the benefit of the world. Well, not surprising, actually, that he could lay down in the mud like that for someone who had helped him so much.